So I got a new MacBook on Black Friday and I haven't done any coding on it yet, so the development environment isn't set up yet. So I was thinking to make a video about how to set up your development environment on a Mac. If you're new to the channel, I do a lot of coding tutorials, especially tutorials for people who are just learning the foundations of programming. And so whenever I do these tutorials, my development environment is already fully configured and fully set up. So I thought it would be cool to do a video where I do it all from scratch, where I set up a development environment all from scratch. So if you want to set up your development environment with me from scratch, then you've come to the right place. And if you don't know what a development environment is, you can just think of it as a series of tools that help you actually do some coding or some development in your computer. In this video, I'm going to go over 3 main steps or 3 main tools. The first one is going to be installing Visual Studio Code. And this is a code editor that allows you to write code, compile code, and run your code. And then I'm going to go over how to install Git on your computer. And Git is a really useful tool for developers. And I recommend even new programmers to start using Git right away. And then lastly, I'm going to go over how to make a GitHub account. And I already have a GitHub account, but I'm just going to show you how you can sign up for a GitHub account and then connect that GitHub account with your Git installation in your computer. So let's get started. So my name's Henrik and I'm here to help you learn the foundations of software development. So let's get started. But before we begin, I'd like to mention that I do have a free workshop for you. It's called my Capstone Project Workshop. And in that workshop, I go over 3 secrets to coding your own Capstone project in just 3 months. And if you don't know what a Capstone project is, it's just a personal coding project where you apply all your newly acquired coding skills into one personal project. Now, why did I create this workshop? The most common goal that I get from people who apply to my one-on-one programming mentorship program is to, quote, be more proficient at creating projects. You and I both know that learning how to code is more than just memorizing code syntax. It's about applying your coding skills to real-world projects that make you feel confident and capable. A lot of new programmers tell me they struggle with turning what they've learned into something practical, and many feel overwhelmed trying to go beyond tutorials to build their own thing. So if this sounds like you can download this workshop in the link in the description, and if you download it and watch it and pay attention to what it says, then you'll definitely build a good foundation to your software development journey. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to code.visualstudio.com. So it's going to take you to this page here, and then we're going to go to download for Mac OS. So when it's done downloading, you're going to see the zip file in your downloads folder, and we're going to unzip this one. So now we have it here, and we're just going to drag it over to our applications folder. Now if you look at our applications, Visual Studio Code will be here at the bottom. So let's open that. Then it's going to be saying verifying Visual Studio Code. And then this pop-up is going to go up. It's going to ask if we want to open it because it was downloaded from the internet, and then we're going to say open. Okay, so here's what it looks like when I open up Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to use the default theme, dark modern, and then we're going to X out. You can also look at this Get Started with VS Code to learn more about VS Code. You can watch these tutorials. So I'm going to X this out. Now I've never coded with this computer, but I did bring in my code from my other computer into this one. So I'm going to try to open one of the folders that has some of my code in it. So let's go into the file and then go to open folder. Alright, so I've navigated to my GitHub folder, and this folder is just a folder I brought over from my other computer. So I'm going to try opening one of my projects. So I have a project here called First Program, and this is just a folder, this is just a directory. So I'm going to try opening this one. And when I try to open it, this pop-up comes up, so we're just going to allow, and then say, yes, I trust the authors. And actually, I could check this box here, trust the authors of all files in the parent folder, GitHub. So I'm just going to check that so I don't see this pop-up come up every time I open my code in GitHub. So I say, yes, I trust the authors. And you can see this simple program here that I wrote in my other computer. So I brought this code in here. I've never run it here, so there's no play button here that I can run it. There's actually a pop-up down here that says, do you want to install the recommended C/C++ extension pack? So it actually kind of guessed that I had a C code in here. So let's try running, let's install this one here. This pop-up came up saying that the clang command requires the command line developer tools, and it's asking if I want to install those tools. So let's just say yes. And then this license agreement comes up. We're going to read the license agreement. And then agree. Okay, 1 second remaining. 1. Okay, finally it's done. All right, now that took a long time. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to install Code Runner. So we go to extensions, go to Code Runner, then we're going to select this one here and we're going to install this one. All right, now we see this play button here. So let's try to see if we can run our code. Okay, so we're able to run our code. It says here, hello YouTube, and then the code exited with 0. And it took a long time. It took 10 seconds. I just decided to restart Visual Studio Code. Now let's try running it again. Okay, that's better. 0.33 seconds. All right, next thing I'm going to do is, I don't really like that it's outputting the output to this output tab. I'd rather have it output to this terminal tab. So let's try to fix that. And this is important because if you're going to create some console applications and then you want to put some user input, you can't really type in here. You can only type in the terminal. And so we want our output to show up in the terminal instead. Okay, so here's an example of when I would ask the user for some input. So let's try running this one. Okay, so you see it's running here, but we can't really input our name in here. So the program is kind of stuck. So this is why I want it to open, or this is why I want it to run in terminal instead. Okay, first let's go to settings. And then all you have to do is type run in terminal. And then check this one. Then we can exit the settings. And now let's try running it again. Okay, so now it's running inside terminal. You can see it down here. It says, hello YouTube, what is your name? Henrik. Hello, Henrik. All right, so there you go. We installed Visual Studio Code. We're able to write some code and then compile it and run it. Now let's move on to Git. All right, here I just opened up a terminal and you can just find the terminal application in your applications folder. So here we're going to check if Git is already installed. And I believe it's already installed because we installed command line developer tools. Remember earlier in the video where we were waiting for the command line developer tools to be installed? So I think it was installed with that install. So let's just check. So just do git -- version. And so there you go. Git is already installed. If you do this in your terminal and you don't get something similar to this where the version numbers are being shown for Git, then let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to help you there. Okay, step 2 is really easy. Now we're going to go to step 3, which is setting up your GitHub account and linking it to your Git installation. So here, if you don't have a GitHub account, just go to github.com/signup and then you enter your email here. I'm not going to create a junk GitHub account. I'm just going to sign in with my GitHub account. So I'm just going to go here and sign in. All right, so here's my GitHub dashboard. So after you've created your GitHub account, you're going to have a dashboard like this too. And the next thing, or the last thing I'm going to show you is how to connect your GitHub account with the Git installation in your computer. Now, if you haven't used Git or GitHub before, you can watch my other videos on Git and GitHub. But basically, Git is the main tool that you're going to be using. And Git allows you to track different versions of your code. And so it's kind of like saving your progress in your code over time. And you save your progress in this thing called repositories. And a repository is just like some folder or directory that has all of your code in it. And in order to host that somewhere, that repository somewhere, you need GitHub. So GitHub is a server or platform that allows you to store your repositories online. And so it's just gonna hold all the repositories of all of your projects. And when you want to share your code with people, you can just send them a link to your GitHub account, and then they can look at all of your code there. In keeping with the theme of starting fresh, I'm just going to create a totally new repository. So let's just go here, create new repository. And I'm going to name the repository dev-env setup for development environment setup. And then we're going to choose public here, create the repository. So I've created the repository, and this is the link that we're going to use to clone the repository into our local machine. So this is hosted online. So this repository is online, but if we're gonna actually add code to it, you have to make a clone of it in your local machine. So we're gonna use this link to clone it. So we're gonna copy this one. Then we're gonna go back into terminal and we're gonna do git clone. And then paste this link here. And say yes. Okay, so it's going to say permission denied here, and that's because this is a new computer and so it doesn't have any keys on it. And so when I try to access this repository from this computer, it's not going to work. It's going to say permission denied. So there's many ways we can go about addressing this issue. We can either create a new public and private key and upload the public key into our GitHub account, or I can copy the private key from my other machine and bring it over into this machine. But for this video, I'm just going to create a new public and private key just to keep in the theme of starting fresh. So to create this pair, I'm just going to do SSH-keygen. And then you just use the default locations for the SSH keys. I'm not going to enter a passphrase. So this is the private key that was generated, and then this is the public key that was generated. And so we're just going to get the public key and put it in our GitHub account. So let's do cat and then just copy this thing here. Okay, so we're going to copy this public key. All right, so we're back in github.com. We're just going to go to the settings. Go to the SSH keys here. And then we're going to do new SSH key. Call it fresh. Paste, add. Okay, just navigated to my GitHub folder that I showed you earlier. And then we're going to do git clone and then that SSH link. Okay, warning, you appear to have cloned an empty repository, and that makes sense because we don't have anything in this repository yet. But if you can see here, when I do an ls to see all of the directories in this folder, we can see our new repositories right here, dev env setup. All right, to finish off the video, let's close this folder and open up our repository. Okay, it's right here. And then create a new file. Let's just call it dev setup.c. Okay, I'm just setting up my dev environment, dev setup 1.2. Actually, I don't like this space here. Okay, that's better. Now let's add this file to our repository on our local machine, and then we're going to upload it to our remote repository. And then you're going to see that in GitHub. So here's our terminal. Let's just go to the dev env setup, and then we can do a git status. And then we can see that we're on the main branch, but we're going to add this file to our main branch. Okay, we can see that we've added our dev setup file. Now we can commit that file. Usually when you do a git commit for the first time on a machine, it's gonna say that the configuration hasn't been set up for the committer. So here I just have a default name and default email address. And so we can actually edit this. So let's edit this. Okay, uncomment that, and I'm gonna put my actual email. And then I'm gonna do this amend to my commit. If you actually look at my commit, it says my name, but then it says Henrik at Henrik's MacBook. But I wanted to use my actual email, so we're going to do this. Okay, now that I checked the log, it actually has my name correct and my email correct. And now I'm going to push this change to my remote repository. Okay, so I've created a new branch called main, and then we should see this main branch in our GitHub account. Okay, let's go to my repositories, dev env setup, and then there you go. This is the main branch, and then this is the code that I just wrote. All right, there you go. So I set up my development environment, and I hope you're able to set up your development environment. And just to note, this development environment is a really basic one. And this is just the development environment that I usually recommend for beginners to do when they're first starting to learn how to code. And so when they're first starting to learn how to code, of course, I recommend that they learn C, because I believe that C is the programming language that you can use to really understand the foundations of programming. And that was actually my experience. I was learning how to code, and then I was struggling. And then when I learned how to code in C, I was able to get a good foundation, and that helped me learn other programming languages. And so this setup should really help you learn those foundations. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a free workshop for you, my Capstone project workshop. And in that workshop, I go over 3 secrets to coding your own Capstone project in just 3 months. So if you want to become more proficient at creating your own projects, you want to move on from these tutorials and create your own projects, then be sure to check the link in the description and watch my coding workshop today. Alright, that's it for this week's video. I hope it really helped you out. And if it did help you out, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any other questions, if something didn't work for you, or you're still confused on how to set up your development environment, or if you have any other basic questions, just let me know in the comments section. I'll be sure to answer you there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.